Okay, this screencast is going to start with the beginning of Chapter 13, the Progressive Movement. And so we're going to first talk about what the need for the Progressive Movement is. Think about all of the issues that have been happening because of industrialization, immigration, urbanization, and all the ill effects that are caused by those things, those changes in our business sector and economy. The progressive movement is going to try to solve or address those issues. And you can think about what the words progress or progressive mean as depicted in the video. So progress means to move forward or change, or progressive means to take action. So then progressivism would mean like to take action in order to create change. And specifically, the definition of the progressive movement is going to be a movement in the early 1900s aimed at correcting social injustice, reforming government, and restoring economic opportunity for all Americans. There are four main goals of the progressive movement, and we're going to look at them individually and talk about them in a little more detail at this time. The first main goal was protecting social welfare. Progressive reformers wanted to work to soften some of the harsh effects or conditions that were caused by industrialization and urbanization. So it worked to soften some of the harsh conditions of industrialization and urbanization. So specifically talking about like the ill effects within the cities and social effects. So specific things that stemmed out of the goal of protecting social welfare. Two organizations that you all are probably familiar with today, the YMCA and the Salvation Army. The YMCA was kind of aimed at being like a community center where people in cities could kind of come and have a break. They could take classes together. They could the kids could play together. They had libraries, and the Y is still a very popular gym center today. And then the Salvation Army made efforts to like feed the poor and collect money to provide relief to people. Sorry, picking up with where we left off. So Salvation Army was aimed at helping the people who are in poverty and helping care for children and those who are needy, and they collected money to also give back. And they're the people that you would often see during Christmas time ringing the bells at the grocery and department stores collecting money for Christmas efforts. So that is kind of some of the effects or things we see come out of the goal, protecting social welfare. The next goal that we're going to talk about is promoting moral improvement. Some reformers did feel that it was morality and not the workplace that held the key to improving the lives of poor people, and that people's moral lives would affect their social and economic lives. And so some people called for the banning of alcohol. This is known as temperance, or more commonly as prohibition. Basically, people feel that alcohol is kind of undermining American morality and would improve the lives of families. And so the Women's Christian Temperance Union, WCTU, is formed, which spoke in favor of temperance and prohibition. And the leader of the WCTU was one lady named Carrie Nation, as spelled on the screen in bold. And this is a more well thought of picture of her. She often carried with her a hatchet, and she would storm saloons and kind of chew out bar owners and then attempt to break glass bottles with her hatchet. Okay, on to the next goal of the progressive movement, creating economic reform. This is kind of trying to address the problems in the workforce and the workplace, problems such as business corruption, problems such as bad working conditions, and also problems like child labor being kind of misused at this time. So you have a group of people called muckrakers, as spelled on the screen, and they are journalists who are attempting to expose all of the corrupt sides of business and industry in the hopes of bringing about reform. Two of the most well-known muckrakers their names are pictured on the screen, and their books, which are kind of important. So Upton Sinclair is one example. Upton Sinclair is the novelist for the book The Jungle, and this was a book that kind of exposed the terrible conditions in the meat packing industry. And Ida Tarbell writes a book about the Standard Oil Company, and you know that it's Rockefeller who owns the Standard Oil Company, so she is trying to really expose all of the injustice inside of his specific company. Again, an effort to bring about reform. The last goal is about fostering efficiency. Progressive leaders wanted to kind of promote progressive and positive initiative forms of change. And so they are going to put their faith in science to help make society and the workplace a little more efficient. We see the idea of scientific management, where you use scientific principles to create like more efficiency in the workplace, thus like lessening the load that people work. So the assembly line method and like promoting that method to make the lives of the employees a little more easier is definitely an aspect of the progressive movement. What we will end with at this time is the idea of cleaning up government. States basically start to kind of delegate a little more government regulation to the people, just wanting to hear the people's voices a little bit more. You know, people are starting to question their governments and wanting to see some government reform. And so a few things we see happening, just for some examples. We see initiatives started. Initiatives are bills that were originated by people rather than by lawmakers. We also see recalls. Recalls enabled voters to basically vote to remove public officials from elected positions. Like if there was a large enough cry for this, they would have to face basically another election in the middle of their term to see whether or not they would be kept for the remainder of their term. So they would have, like I said, they'd have to force another election before they could finish their term, if enough voters voted for it. And then we have the 17th Amendment passed, and the 17th Amendment provides for the direct election of senators. We, as U.S. citizens, do have the right to vote for our senators ourselves, but we did not do that until the 17th Amendment was passed. Senators used to be considered, well, senators are still considered the higher house, but they used to be selected from state legislatures, and now the people can vote for their senators as well. All right, we'll pick up with the rest of this in class on Tuesday, so please write down any questions you have, and I will see y'all then.